Antikärnvapenorganisationen ICAN fick Nobels fredspris 2017. Samtidigt blir hotet från världens samlade kärnvapen allt större. Förre Sovjetledaren Mikhail Gorbatjov var en av dem som ledde den nedrustning som innebar slutet på det kalla kriget. Nu varnar han för att vi återigen är på väg in i en värld präglad av terrorbalans och kapprustning. I detta speciella dokument utifrån hör vi överlevare och världsledare om en farlig utveckling som skett i det fördolda. När ska vi börja lära oss av historien?
I saw the bluish-white flash. And then I had a sensation of floating up in the air. And that was the end of my consciousness. When I woke up, I found myself in a total darkness and silence. Instinctively, I tried to move my body, but I couldn't. So I knew I was faced with death. Then I started hearing whispering voices of the girls around me. Mother, help me. God, help me. I'm here. Then all of a sudden, strong male voice said, don't give up. Don't give up. Keep moving. Keep pushing. Keep kicking. I'm trying to free you. So that happened in the morning. It was dark as twilight. I saw some moving object approaching me from the center part of the city. Then I realized there were a procession of human beings, but they looked like the procession of ghosts. Their hair was raised straight up, and they were bleeding, burned and blackened and swollen, and their skin and flesh were hanging from their bones. The center of detonation, the temperature was over 1 million degrees. By the time that fireball came down to the ground, it was 4,000 degrees Celsius. All those people were burned. The strange memory of that is, it was so quiet. Nobody was screaming for help. Nobody was shouting or running. All they said was, water, please, water, please. As one who actually experienced that undescribable horror, I can never let any human being to experience that ever again. And you, decision makers of the world, please be a human.
Ну и надо сказать, что все были в мире очень обеспокоены, в том числе и в Советском Союзе, и в Соединенных Штатах Америки. Это тем, что гонка ядерных вооружений достигла опасных масштабов. И это могло привести к трагическим последствиям. Даже не потому, что кто-то принял политическое решение, из-за сбоев.
I think that any use of nuclear weapons would be a global catastrophe because it would put into the atmosphere, in addition to the people who were killed immediately, it put into the atmosphere an ingredient that would probably cool the Earth a lot and give us great problems with our food supply. And in general, would be a very bad thing. Nuclear weapons, if used, will be a huge problem. And we need to get back to realizing that.
Meanwhile, America had exploded the first H-bomb, 1,000 times more powerful than the atom bombs.
When the United States was testing hydrogen bombs at the Bikini Atolls in the South Pacific, not just Hiroshima, not only Nagasaki, now the Bikini, United States are determined to continue to prepare for the future.
The Soviet Tu-95 bomber. The pilot drops his ordnance. A 50-megaton nuclear bomb.
Яркое свечение еще продолжается. В этом опыте оно длится необычайно долго. Страшной силы напутствует приходу ударной волны.
All the explosives used in World War II multiplied by 10.
We have some 30,000 nuclear weapons. 10,000 of those are targeted against the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union has 20,000 nuclear weapons. 6,000 of those are targeted against us in the United States. The other countries have about 1,000 altogether, the British, the French, and the Chinese. Altogether, just a little over 50,000 nuclear weapons in the world.
This is the equivalent power of the nuclear arsenal. 18,000 million tons, more than 1 million Hiroshimas.
History is a process, and totally erroneous to think that tomorrow is determined by today, because tomorrow was determined yesterday. And therefore, the world was going into a blind alley. It was practically split into two trends, let me say, which were conflicting each other. I mean the split, ideological split of the world.
We had two world powers at the time with their alliances. On the one side, Moscow and the Warsaw Pact organization. On the other side, United States and NATO. And after the Second World War, Germany was divided, and the eastern part became the GDR and a more or less sovereign state. And in the GDR, about 370,000 Soviet troops were stationed. The Soviet Union interfered in the domestic policy of his allies. For example, in Prague, in Czechoslovakia, in '68. Or 56 in Hungary. Or 53 in East Berlin with tanks.
Way back right after the end of World War II, there were many people, particularly in the CIA and the Defense Department, who thought that things wouldn't change. Détente was based on the idea, you're here, we're there, we're here. That's life. Name of the game is peaceful coexistence. Well, peaceful coexistence is important because we have nuclear-armed camps.
Modern nuclear war strategy is to aim warheads first at priority targets, missile silos, and missile-carrying submarine bases, then the vital communications, radar and intelligence centers, then major airfields and naval bases. It's generally accepted by military analysts that once a nuclear war starts, it will inevitably become a major exchange.
Deterrence is the ability to get somebody to not do something because the costs will exceed the benefits. And usually that's associated with a threat. You can deter by a massive retaliation. You can also deter by strong defense, which is called deterrence through denial. If you're not going to be able to carry out your actions against me, then you're not going to try them in the first place.
10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, feu!
J'étais au cœur du pouvoir dans ce pays pendant 20 ans. J'étais ministre pendant 5 ans. Et moi, je crois à la dissuasion nucléaire. C'est-à-dire, je pense que la dissuasion nucléaire nous a protégés d'autres guerres. En même temps, la France, depuis le général de Gaulle et après, Mitterrand et les autres, a toujours cru à la dissuasion nucléaire vraie. Jamais à la guerre nucléaire limitée. Jamais. D'ailleurs, la grande tension entre de Gaulle et les États-Unis, c'est quand les États-Unis, dans les années 60, voulaient imposer la théorie de la riposte graduée, qui voulait dire, s'il y a une attaque sur l'Allemagne de l'Ouest, on va répondre sur l'Allemagne de l'Est. S'il y a une attaque sur la France, on va répondre sur la Pologne. Et la France, d'une certaine façon, est restée fidèle à cette idée qu'il ne doit pas y avoir de guerre nucléaire limitée, parce que les conséquences sont monstrueuses, et que donc on ne peut pas avoir une escalade barreau par barreau.
I think it's important for people to distinguish between strength and the use of force. They aren't the same thing. I think the stronger you are, the less likely it is that you will have to use the strength. One of the great items of strength was when we had a long negotiation with the Soviets to get rid of intermediate nuclear forces and actually to cut strategic forces in half. And with our NATO allies, we had agreed that if the INF negotiations didn't succeed, we would deploy missiles of our own to counter the ones the Soviets had already deployed. So that happened in late 1983. And the deployment of ballistic missiles called Pershings in Germany was a very traumatic event. And the Soviets walked out of the arms control negotiations, fanned war talk, and it was a very tense time. But our deployments went ahead, and that was a basic show of strength.
Yeah, after deploying American nuclear missiles, it was the peak of the new Cold War. No negotiations, no meetings at all between the two world powers, United States and Soviet Union.
In the early 80s, when Reagan first came into office, there was what I call the Little Cold War, a revival of fear about a nuclear competition and extreme bipolarity. The feeling of the détente was over. Many Americans thought the Soviets were getting stronger. So I'd say hostility, or the sense of hostility, had increased in the early 80s.
Above everything else, the American people want leaders who will keep the peace, keep the peace, keep the peace. Henry Cabot Lodge and I keep the peace. No, Mr. Khrushchev. No, Mr. Khrushchev. No, Mr. Khrushchev. Lodge and I, no, firm diplomacy. No, Mr. Khrushchev. No, Mr. Khrushchev. No, peace.
Of the invading North Korea. Flying under the banner of the
We have an exclusive report from Michael Terrence Black from Patterson, New Jersey.
Escalate in Laos. Get out. That is the agonizing question. Far away, another anomaly cannot possibly be believed.
I believe that
limited nuclear war will work. Under the Charter of the United Nations, we are asking tonight that an emergency meeting of the Security
Premier Lumumba was seized by the forces of strongman Colonel Mobutu.
We have an exclusive report from Frankie.
The air attack warning sounds like this is the sound.
When you hear the air attack warning, you and your family must take cover.
For more than 2 hours.
September the 11th, 1973.
The government.
There was a period when I was involved in some research and computer modeling of the consequences of the so-called dynamic balance of the strategic exchange, let me say.
On November the 1st, 1983, Moscow and Washington were linked by satellite and television for a most unusual scientific conference.
Хотел предоставить слово Юрию Антоновичу Израилю. Пожалуйста. Благодарю вас.
There was a special institute working, mathematical institute. Nikita Moiseev, the famous academician, was leading this group. But they have come to this conclusion of the nuclear winter, which practically proved that there will be no winners in case of the nuclear war.
Beneath the clouds, virtually all domesticated and wild sources of food would be destroyed. Most of the human survivors would starve to death. The extinction of the human species would be a real possibility.
Everybody's talking about Reykjavik, but for me, the most important was Geneva meeting in '85, when Gorbatjov and Reagan signed a declaration that there will be no winners in the nuclear war, and therefore nuclear wars cannot be fought at all. This recognition on the both sides, I think, is a tremendous achievement.
Our main interest was how to continue a policy of dialogue with the East. And when Reagan was re-elected in November '84, a few weeks later, Chancellor Kohl met him, and they signed a common communique. And for the first time ever, it was not usual to do that, but for us it was absolutely important. If you read it, Reagan promised to start the dialogue with Soviet Union again, if possible. And he agreed to start arms control and arms reductions negotiations with Soviet Union as well, if possible. Unfortunately, 3 months later, Gorbachev came into office.
В конце концов, когда мы встретились в ноябре 1985 года в Женеве с президентом Рейганом, это первая наша встреча была. До этого, кстати, 6 лет или даже более во времени высшие руководители Советского Союза и Соединенных Штатов Америки не встречались. Такая обстановка, весь мир напряжен, ядерная угроза просто у порога, все может быть. И в это время две главных страны, держатели всех, в основном всех ядерных вооружений, не встречаются даже. Надо было выходить из этой глухой ситуации и выходить на нормальные отношения. Кто-то должен решаться был на это. И нас хотели все время запугать. Нас хотели этой гонкой перегрузить. Ну, много еще придумывалось. Но ведь это огромная страна, для того, чтобы так просто все можно ее сбить с толку. Это не... Но мы предложили другой подход. Признать ситуацию, признать ее опасной и перед народами заявить о том, что надо остановить этот процесс опасный и заняться мирным сотрудничеством и созданием нового мирового порядка.
We had a flow of movement in the relationship between President Reagan and General Secretary Gorbachev that was interesting to watch. It started in Geneva, and the first thing that happened was Gorbachev came in and they were taken by prearrangement to a special room, little fireplace, and the two of them sat just one-on-one. And they went much longer than people thought. And I remember every White House has a guy whose job it is to go and stand obnoxiously to make it clear time is up. And he came around to me and he said, I better go and break this up. They're way over time. I said, stay out of there. The more they sit together, the better off it is.
Вот в Женеве это главное было, но нашло это выражение в этом тезисе, который был сказан тогда, и он записан был. С тех пор он живет и не умирает, хотя все меньше на него обращают внимание, но тем не менее я буду об этом говорить, надо вернуться к нему. А речь шла о том, что было тогда в Женеве записано, что ядерная война недопустима, и в ней не может быть победителей. Возникает вопрос, ну а ради чего гонка ядерных вооружений? Если в ней не может быть победителей, и что это угрожает же всему миру. Было записано это заявление, которое было заявлено на весь мир. Это самый главный итог в Женеве. После этого начались другие отношения. Начались поиски, как выйти на новое сотрудничество с учетом опасности. Потом был Рейкьявик, потом пошли встречи другие, и, наконец, было начато движение по разрушению и уничтожению ядерного оружия. Это труднейший был поворот, мало кто верил. И это тоже облагородило всю международную обстановку.
If you look at the whole period, we got at the end the most far-reaching arms control and arms reduction agreements we ever could sign. Never before and never again, unfortunately.
We took a very strong delegation. Well, we sat in a little room in a place called Hofty House. I'm sitting beside President Reagan, or Edward Shevardnadze sitting beside Gorbachev. It was a very flowing conversation. And we talked about one time about how undesirable nuclear weapons were, that if they were dropped, it could destroy civilization. So the two leaders both agreed that it would be a good thing to get rid of them if we could. And they also agreed that ballistic missiles, we might get rid of them. And I remember, but this was all conditioned on what amounted to getting rid of the Strategic Defense Initiative, which President Reagan wouldn't do, and I agreed with him. So at one point, we were sort of breaking up, and Gorbachev says to Reagan, Mr. President, if we get rid of ballistic missiles, why do you need a defense against them? And Reagan said, because people know how to make them. And you never know when there's some rogue state that will come up with one, and then you and I will be glad we have a defense against them. We could defend against one or two. And Gorbachev said, Mr. President, you would even sell milk technology to us. But I think Reagan was quite sincere in saying, having defense on both sides is more stable than the mutual assured destruction. The Reykjavik meeting made a lot of headway. We did get the elimination of intermediate range weapons, and then later in the Bush administration, strategic arms were cut in half, which was all basically was agreed on at Reykjavik.
You see, we at the end we got an INF treaty reducing all nuclear middle range and short range missiles of the range of 5,000 to 500 kilometers. Zero on both sides. Miracle, absolutely great. Yeah, a few years before we had mass demonstrations against us. This would be a job of today as well, to start again with such negotiations.
The importance of this treaty transcends numbers. We have listened to the wisdom in an old Russian maxim, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. Mr. General Secretary, though my pronunciation may give you difficulty, the maxim is doверяй, no проверяй. Trust but verify.
Назначение этого...
На каждой встрече вы это повторяете.
You repeat that at every meeting.
La rencontre de Reykjavik a été la rencontre, en quelque sorte, de deux utopistes. Tout le complexe militaro-industriel était épouvanté par la position de Reagan, mais il y avait une dimension chez Reagan. Et Gorbatchev, qui était obsédé par le fait que son pays était au bord du gouffre, n'y arrivait plus, allait s'effondrer. Sur le plan économique, sans parler de l'aspect politique ou moral, etc. Évidemment, pour lui, c'était une chance extraordinaire si les États-Unis arrêtaient leur pression. L'Union soviétique n'était plus obligée de courir derrière. Mais ce n'était pas du tout un accord réaliste. Enfin, pas du tout, en fait. D'ailleurs, on l'a bien vu. On l'a bien vu.
Well, different Americans responded in different ways to Gorbachev's emphasis on denuclearization. And I think a lot of Americans thought this is the old Soviet propaganda game. I think Gorbachev and Reagan may have been more in tune with each other than they were with some of their own advisors.
But also to all of you, I think you should know that the General Secretary and I have one idea in common, and that is that there must be friendship between our two countries.
Вы очень смелый, вы очень прочно передаете большую общество.
Clearly, in order to open the way for the development, the reunification of the historical, let me say, river into the one trend was inevitable. And it happened. And we were lucky that at that time, the Soviet Union leadership was presided and led by Mikhail Gorbachev.
Gorbatchev est un homme très fascinant, parce que c'est un homme normal, par ailleurs extraordinairement sympathique. Mais il est normal alors qu'il sortait d'un système politique anormal, le système communiste soviétique. le système qui avait été inventé par Lénine puis Staline. Et après, vous voyez sortir Gorbatchev, c'est tout à fait étonnant. Quand il est devenu dirigeant, en mars 85, les deux seules personnes en Occident qui ont compris que c'était tout à fait différent d'avant, c'est Madame Thatcher, curieusement, et Mitterrand. Et Mitterrand, il a compris tout de suite. Notamment parce qu'il avait été en Russie, il y avait un déjeuner au Kremlin, et il y avait Gorbatchev qui était là autour de la table. Gorbatchev chargé de l'agriculture. Et Tchernenko dit à Gorbatchev, il lui dit « Alors, comment ça va en ce moment l'agriculture ?» Et Gorbatchev lui dit « Oh, ça va très mal. » « Ah bon? Et ça va très mal depuis quand? » Et Gorbatchev lui dit « Depuis 1917. » C'est-à-dire la date de la Révolution. Et Gorbatchev dit ça au Kremlin, à la table des dirigeants, devant un dirigeant étranger. Alors Mitterrand s'est dit « Mais cet homme-là est quand même différent des autres. »
Ce que nous avons à faire en commun, d'abord, c'est à bâtir une relation franco-soviétique solide, pacifique, constructive.
Если взять внутреннюю обстановку в Советском Союзе, то очень назрели вопросы, большие. Надо было что-то делать для того, чтобы преодолеть то отставание, которое технологическое в Советском Союзе возникло в сравнении с развитыми странами. Надо было решать много вопросов, которые связаны с обеспечением жизненных условий людей. Огромная страна с огромными ресурсами, образованная страна, и в то же время очень большие проблемы на рынке. И с этим, так сказать, на питании и, в общем, на настроении общества. Ну, слушайте, если так дело было, что в очередь стояли часами, а то и днями за итальянскими новыми чулками, то это можно сказать, что дело было плохо. Поэтому надо было решать вот это вопрос благосостояния людей. Далее.
He was thinking about the country, which, with a tremendous potential, with talented people, bright scientists, excellent writers, very high-level culture, and living in absolutely inappropriate conditions. And besides, the political system which existed was hindering. It just limited, reduced entrepreneurship, freedom, whatever.
Gorbachev himself had started a reform policy called Glasnost and Perestroika. And more important, he had announced during a Warsaw Pact summit that he would not anymore interfere in the domestic policy of his allies. And he kept word.
And he decided that certain injection of freedom should be used in order to... At first he was thinking about saving the system, but make it more efficient, more human. And he started deep reforms in the years 88, 89, when practically the freedom of entrepreneurship was brought into the country, when people started to move around, they got an opportunity to go and to see other places. He let political prisoners out of the prisons. First contested election took place at that time, when the party hierarchy was just swept aside from the political landscape. And new people came to politics, which opened the way and triggered the change. Of course, in Eastern Europe, I remember Adam Michnik, one of the leaders of Solidarność at that time, when the Polish Revolution unfolded, and he said that without the virus of Gorbachev's perestroika, I'm not sure that we would have achieved what we have achieved today. And he was right.
Wierzący, co wierzą, że muszą być w partii, bo żona, bo dzieci, bo raty, bo maluch. Partyjni, co chyłkiem przyjmują komunię, bobony na cukier, bobony do raju. Zbudować dziś mają tę drugą, choć pierwsza dla jednych jest gorsza, dla innych jest lepsza. Żeby urosła w siłę i żeby żyli.
When Poland became a democratic country, it didn't interfere. Poland was the first proof that he keeps his word.
Z rozmlácenýho kostela v krabici s kusem mýdla přinesl jsem si anděla, polámali mu křídla. Díval se na mě oddaně, já měl jsem trochu trému, tak vtiskl jsem mu do dlaně lahvičku od parfému. A proto prosím věř mi, chtěl jsem ho žádat, aby mi mezi dveřmi pomohl.
Pendant très longtemps, la réunification de l'Allemagne paraissait impossible. Tout simplement parce que l'Union soviétique était prête à tout faire pour l'empêcher. Donc c'était une guerre éventuelle en Europe. Quand j'étais très jeune conseiller diplomatique, j'étais preneur de notes dans un entretien entre François Mitterrand et Helmut Schmidt, chancelier allemand à l'époque. Et Helmut Schmidt dit à Mitterrand « Je ne verrai jamais la réunification allemande ». Et Mitterrand lui dit « Mais pourquoi ?» Et Schmidt lui dit « Parce que je suis malade, je fume trop, et ça n'arrivera jamais ». Et Mitterrand lui dit « Mais je ne suis pas d'accord avec vous, parce que dans 15 ans, maximum, l'Union soviétique ne sera plus assez forte pour empêcher la réunification. »
We have had refugees in Poland, in Czechoslovakia and Hungary. Thousands, 10,000s. And therefore we had two back channels. One was Genscher with Shevardnadze to explain to him what should we do with so many refugees. And the second back channel was Chief of Staff of the Chancellor, Minister Seiters, with the GDR government. The question was, will they accept that people can leave to West Germany or not? And the Soviet Union, GDR, and Czechoslovakia has to agree. Unfortunately, they did.
at that time working inside Kremlin walls, you heard the sounds of mantle of history, which was going at that time through the world and changing the world because of the personality of Gorbachev. So for me, Gorbachev was a man of, let me say, he is not religious, but internally he is driven by Christian morality. And whenever you think about the decisions, very hard decisions that he had to take, I think that this course, this compass, was always prompting him the decisions.
I also think Gorbachev was one of the great heroes of the 20th century in the sense that he wanted to reduce the tensions and tempo of the Cold War. And when things did become difficult and began to fall apart, he could have unleashed war, and he didn't. And I think he deserves great credit for that. But his intention was to preserve the Soviet Union, but his actions essentially were to speed up the end of the Soviet Union. I often say that Gorbachev is like a man with a thread hanging off the sweater, and so he starts to pull on the thread just to get rid of that thread, and eventually he winds up unraveling the whole sweater.
Our main concern in 89, 90 was all the time, will Gorbachev survive? There was his Communist Party of Soviet Union. It was not so easy for him. He was not absolutely free what to do. There was still a Politburo, there was still the Central Committee of the party, there was still the Red Army. Therefore, it was not for sure that he will survive.
A coup has taken place. This anti-constitutional action is based on a tremendous lie.
The coup had failed, but the Soviet president had in effect returned to a different country. Much had changed during those 3 days in August.
I defended the Soviet Union to the last bullet. That's what I did. But I failed.
You tell me to ban the party as a criminal organization? I can't agree. Allow me to sign this decree suspending the Communist Party of Russia.
Boris Nikolaevich, Boris Nikolaevich, Boris Nikolaevich.
So Yeltsin, I concluded, well, at least I have the Russian Federation. We could just declare independence from the Soviet Union. For Nazarbayev, who was the communist leader of the unit, which was Kazakhstan. Once Yeltsin had said, well, I'm going to be the president of Russia, maybe I'll be the president of Kazakhstan. And this guy, Lukashenko, he said, okay, we'll do Belarus.
The Belaveja Accords were signed in 1991 by the leaders of Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine, that formally dissolved the Soviet Union and established the CIS.
And because of the formation of a community of independent states, I have decided to resign my duties as President of the Soviet Union. My principles guide my decision. The trend to disintegration of the country has prevailed, and I cannot agree to it, nor can I accept it. I leave my office with concern, but I also have hope. I have faith in you, the people of Russia, in your spirit, and in your wisdom.
And I must say that this process is far from being finished. He started it. He had to live from power. Maybe you remember Joseph Galbraith once said that in politics, sometimes you have to take the right side and lose. So Gorbachev took the right side. He lost power, but he won historical battle, and he won as a personality.
After that walking down, people felt the problem, nuclear problem, has ended. So they went back to sleep. So I keep saying, don't come out again, wake up. The problem is still going on, it's worse.
Это процесс. Мировой процесс, в котором все всякое происходит. В том числе вот такое событие произошло, как распад Советского Союза. Но кроме этого происходили события и в других местах, и в других частях. И создавались новые союзы, и входили в международную политику новые силы. Но если говорить о Советском Союзе и России, то надо сказать, на Западе такая радость была у них. Они под столом руки потирали, хотя все говорили одно, но радовались, что распадается союз. Это заблуждение, оно происходило здесь, внутри, и теперь проблемы одна за другой встают. приходится как бы возрождать сотрудничество между этими странами, которые столетиями жили вместе в одном государстве. Но триумфаторство о том, что мы победили, это то, что буквально привело в заблуждение политиков Запада, и прежде всего Соединенных Штатов Америки и других. Но прежде всего Соединенных Штатов Америки. Америка смотрела на это событие таким образом. Ага, мы стремились избавиться от этого противника Советского Союза. Или ослабить, или еще лучше, если бы его не стало. Ну вот его не стало. Ура! Ну ура можно прокричать. Но для того, чтобы понять, к чему это привело, опять снова пошла гонка. Возродилась гонка. Она идет.
Well, there's a certain amount of tension between Russia and the United States right now. In fact, Russia and the Western world, Europeans.
Recent New York Times investigation found the United States is on pace to spend as much as $1 trillion over the next 3 decades to rebuild its nuclear arsenal and facilities.
Kremlin is angry following a report on a German TV station saying the U.S. is prepared to deploy upgraded nuclear bombs to bases in Europe.
They're in Turkey, and they're in Italy, and they're in Germany, and Netherlands, and Belgium.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has announced that Moscow is boosting its nuclear arsenal. It comes after Kremlin officials denounced a US plan to station tanks and heavy weapons in NATO states along Russia's border. They say it's the most aggressive American act since the Cold War.
Today, as part of the planned events, we will activate all the different armed forces of the Russian Federation all over the territory of Russia, including the nuclear forces.
And Russia seems to be emphasizing a buildup of its nuclear arsenal and modernization. And they talk about even using it.
So I would say the general consensus among Russia watchers, and I think it's correct, is that U.S.-Russian relations are in the worst place they've been since the end of the Cold War. That's a tough statement, but I think that's correct. So basically, the Russian official documents, as well as when they're talking privately, talk about the U.S. as the adversary, and we talk about them as the opponent or adversary. They've taken some bold actions. They seized and annexed Crimea. We have declared that, well, okay, NATO is back. We're going to have a new NATO playbook. And in the recent Obama budget, we have a quadrupling of the budget for the European Reassurance Fund, which is including repositioning tanks in Europe, which had all been removed, and American forces will be rotating constantly through the frontline states, including the Baltics and Romania and Poland. And similarly, in economic terms, whereas before Russia is being integrated into the world economy, now with sanctions, they're being excluded from the world economy and otherwise. So that's a pretty sour reality.
And we know that in politics, it's always about perception. It's not the enemy that creates a concern. It's a concern, mistrust, which creates the enemy. I will never forget the article in Foreign Policy by Condoleezza Rice in '92, when she said that now, after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the democratization of the world is the historical challenge for the United States. And I think that's a huge mistake because, in fact, good intentions are often, pave the way to hell. So that was, I'm sure, was a good intention. But as a result, people got disappointed, disillusioned. They were looking on the West with its high economic efficiency, human rights, democratic principles, as a beacon. And the soft power which was used de facto by the West was very attractive for the people. When the soft power was switched for the hard power in Iraq, in many other places of the world, people started to think differently. They don't see anymore the Western model as the attractive goal for their lives.
Растут бюджеты военные, как будто бы на пороге новой холодной войны. Но сегодняшние времена еще такие, что мы можем оказаться не только на пороге холодной войны, а вообще втянуты в серьезные конфликты. Да при том вооружении, которое находится в руках, это может кончиться плохо для нас, для всех. Нужно сотрудничество, нужно доверие. Только так можно выйти на новый путь и сохранить нашу планету и нас.
In the history of our continent, we got such a perspective, yeah, a real dream. What Gorbachev has called the Common European House, where everybody has the same security. Everybody, including Russia. We started with yearly conference of the foreign secretaries for more than 20 years. Nothing really happened. We decided to establish a center to prevent conflicts in Europe. You never heard anything of that. And when Medvedev was president, he came forward in a speech in Berlin saying, let us try to agree on a treaty for an all-European peace and security order. He didn't get any answer by the West. Therefore, we missed a hell lot of opportunities. And Putin told me once personally, Prodi came as president of the European Commission to Moscow, proposing an all-European economic free trade area from Lisbon to Vladivostok. Putin said to me, that's a great idea. I'm in favor of it. But nothing happened. Russia was disappointed many times. And a key role played your country, the United States, you see. Our American friends were mainly interested in arms control and arms reduction. And after START 1, they were negotiating START 2, further reduction. And this was successfully done. But after START 2, the head of a department in the Foreign Office in Washington told me, look, Horst, that's our interest, START 2. This is a low-hanging fruit. We will pick it, and that's it.
It was the case that as the Cold War came to an end, we had these agreements, the INF agreement, the START agreement, and I think by now, the number of nuclear weapons in the world is about a third what it was at the time of Reykjavik. On the other hand, there now is a kind of atmosphere of proliferation. So things have gone badly in recent years.
Il reste un reproche de Gorbatchev quand même. Gorbatchev, il continue à penser que les États-Unis auraient pu l'aider plus, à un moment donné, et qu'ils ont refusé. Ils ont dit ça, non, on ne va pas l'aider. Ça se passe la dernière année, en 91. À l'époque, il y a le G7, le G7, et Kohl, Mitterrand et Delors pensent qu'il faut quand même aider Gorbatchev sur le plan économique. Donc ils décident d'élargir le G7 à une séance avec la Russie. Ils invitent Gorbatchev. C'est l'origine du G8, G8. Mais à Londres, Kohl, Delors, Mitterrand disent il faut aider Gorbatchev, c'est notre intérêt. Que l'URSS ne soit pas totalement déstabilisée, il faut l'aider dans la transition. Et les Américains, les Anglais et les Canadiens disent non.
So the big idea then came from Churchill's epigraph in the beginning of his volume on the Second World War. And he says, in victory, magnanimity. So the concept was, if you win, you then still have a world, history's going to go on, and a magnanimous engagement can produce an entirely different world than what happened after World War I with Versailles and an onerous peace, which then left a sort of a seething Germany, which then was ready for something like a Hitler, and then lo and behold, we get World War II. So the window of opportunity was the product of a study group. So Yavlinsky and I had gotten together in the fall of 90, and we would work day and night on this project, the so-called Grand Bargain. And the proposition was, if the West will be magnanimous, including providing $30 billion, the Soviet Union will undertake a very ambitious economic and political reform program and security program. First, economically, to a market economy, politically, to participatory government that we call democracy, and then in security terms, the securing of all the nuclear weapons and materials and the withdrawal of Soviet forces from all of the occupied territories. So it was a pretty grand package. And I never quite figured this out. But Partly, the Bush administration was so preoccupied by Iraq. Well, the Bush was never seized of it. In Europe, we were hopeful that Mrs. T would take the lead because she was tough and she actually saw the idea and understood the idea. And the Germans saw the idea and understood the idea. So it was a little bit of a dream, but I still think it was a good idea.
There are many other agreements the United States and the Soviet Union are signing or announcing during this summit, agreements that represent hard work and a lasting achievement, not just by our governments, but also for the peoples.
C'est à partir de début 92 que nous sommes dans ce fameux monde global, sur lequel il y a toutes sortes d'interprétations. Est-ce que c'est l'arrivée de la sympathique communauté internationale? Est-ce que c'est la reprise de conflits classiques? Est-ce que c'est le choc des civilisations? Est-ce que c'est dominé que par les États-Unis? C'est dans la décennie 90 que moi je parlais d'hyperpuissance, hyperpower, pour cette période particulière. Donc on entre dans cette période plus confuse, que les Occidentaux ont traité avec beaucoup d'arrogance, beaucoup d'hubris. On a gagné. Et nos concepts vont s'appliquer partout. La démocratie, le marché, nos valeurs, avec une dose d'ingénuité et de candeur du côté européen, en plus. Enfin, en gros, les Occidentaux ont été triomphalistes. Et dans cette période, la Russie est considérée comme une quantité négligeable, en fait. Et c'était très fortement ressenti par les Russes.
The position of Chancellor Helmut Kohl from the very beginning was, we can't have security in Europe without Russia or against Russia. And therefore, we tried hard to bring Russia as close as possible to Europe.
Plusieurs attitudes sur plusieurs plans. D'abord, en ce qui concerne l'OTAN, il est vrai que le président Bush père et James Baker avaient eu des conversations avec Gorbatjov sur le fait que l'OTAN n'aurait pas forcément besoin de s'étendre systématiquement, ou que si les pays adhéraient à l'OTAN, il n'y aurait pas forcément des troupes combattantes de l'OTAN, ou que. C'était des discussions. On peut dire aussi que Gorbatchev n'a jamais pu prouver que ça avait été écrit quelque part, c'est pas un traité, il n'y a pas d'engagement, donc les États-Unis n'ont pas violé des engagements. C'est plus une question de climat et de confiance mutuelle. Donc il y a un débat sur l'OTAN.
NATO and Russia signed an agreement, and this agreement, Russia declares NATO is not an enemy to Russia anymore. And later on, we established the NATO-Russia Council. In some respect, it was the first step to bring Russia into NATO. Not into the military organization, but in the political organization. I think this was the right direction. Not easy, but nevertheless, it was the right direction and a lot of confidence-building measures.
Now we have had the opportunity to escape this century's cycle of aggression and instability in Europe and to build something that has literally never existed before. An undivided, peaceful, democratic Europe.
In the Clinton administration, which I served in, and which I was proud to serve in, we also, I think, began making big mistakes, which then were continued in the Bush administration. So the expansion of NATO towards Russia, we kept saying, was not threatening to Russia. But the threat is to the person who perceives a threat, not to the person who tells you, I'm not threatening you. But in any case, the expansion of NATO for the Russian national security establishment was a big item and remains a big item.
Ensuite, pendant plusieurs années, notamment sous George W. Bush, les États-Unis étaient pour l'entrée de l'Ukraine dans l'OTAN et l'élargissement. L'Allemagne était contre, la France aussi. Des gens très, très durs, ils ne sont pas des colombes, comme Kissinger et Brzezinski, ont hésité sur ce point. Mais maintenant, ils considèrent que ce serait une erreur complète de mettre l'Ukraine dans l'OTAN, qu'il faut en faire un pays neutre, au bon sens du terme.
To be strong on the one side, on the other side, be ready for dialogue and cooperation. Hopefully we don't overdo it. I have some problems that the Americans will establish missile defense system, starting in Romania, officially saying it's against Iranian missiles, but nobody can explain to me what should be the motives of Iran to send missiles to Europe. I have no idea why they should do that. Yeah? And there's no doubt that they are afraid of a defense system against them.
Et à certains moments de la tension extrême, certains leaders républicains au Congrès disaient qu'il faut relancer le projet antimissile contre les Russes. Donc les Russes disaient, vous voyez, ils disent la vérité, c'est contre nous. Bon, tout ça est d'une extrême confusion.
President Medvedev was invited to a NATO summit to Madrid, and he was promised establishing a missile defense system. Russia will be involved, yeah, but the Americans never did. That's a problem of the history of disappointments, of promises on the one side and disappointments. And you can't deal with Russia in such a way.
Все наши возражения, на все наши предложения о реальном сотрудничестве. Не хотят с нами сотрудничать, отвергают все наши предложения и действуют по своему плану. Я сейчас не буду, некоторые вещи считаю даже пока некорректным говорить публично. Но вы можете мне верить, можете не верить. Мы предлагали конкретные элементы, конкретный вариант сотрудничества. Они реально все были отклонены. Но вот все-таки пришли к тому, что сейчас построили систему ПРО в Румынии. Говорили это все время о чем? Нам нужно защититься от иранской ядерной угрозы. Где ядерная угроза иранская? Ее нет? Договор подписали уже. И причем Соединенные Штаты были, по сути, инициаторами этого договора с Ираном. Мы помогли, мы поддержали. Но если бы не позиция США, не было бы этого договора. Результат своей работы на этом направлении. Но угрозы нет, а система ПРО продолжает строиться. Значит, мы были правы, когда говорили, что нас обманывают. С нами неискренне.
If you look at the conversation among both Republicans and Democrats, you've got a pretty consistent view. And the consistent view says, we've been in the right, Putin has been in the wrong. Our position is essentially demonizing Putin and Russia, rather than understanding the complexity of the situation and not have to worry about what we didn't do or what we should have done or otherwise.
Putin is playing a really tough, long game here. And one of the things he's done is to let loose cyber attackers to hack into government files, to hack into personal files, hack into the Democratic National Committee. And we recently have learned that, that this is one of their preferred methods of trying to wreak havoc and collect information.
Что делают американские вооруженные силы, в том числе тактическое ядерное оружие? Чего там делают? Послушайте, у нас бюджет Министерства обороны на следующий год, он вырос. Но он в долларовом эквиваленте где-то, чтобы мне не ошибиться, 50 миллиардов примерно. А бюджет Пентагона почти в 10 раз больше. 575 миллиардов, по-моему, утвердил Конгресс недавно. И вы хотите сказать, что мы проводим агрессивную политику? Здравый смысл-то есть или нет?
Of course, we all know that he has been in power for 16 years already. Even the constitution was amended in order to allow that. And clearly he wants to stay without any constitutional limitations. And in my judgment, he is driven mainly by the search to prove that Russia is the true successor of the Soviet Union on the world arena.
Yeah, America's got a whole lot of challenges. Russia is a regional power that is threatening some of its immediate neighbors, not out of strength, but out of weakness.
My impression was the United States lost any interest in Russia. They shifted their interest from Europe to Asia. Understandable. But Russia, they are the second largest nuclear power still in the world. Therefore, they still believe we are on the same level as the United States. But your President Obama, explaining the public that Russia is a regional power means for the Russians, he doesn't respect us. And you see the big advantage of President Bush's father. He never gave Gorbatjov the feeling that he is the loser of the Cold War. No. And this is still important today. And my opinion is all the time, I say, they over-exaggerate it. You know, they overdo it. Nevertheless, we have to take it seriously. And sometimes today I have the impression our American friends are not aware of that. You see that security is the top interest of Russia, whether we like it or not, whether it's true or not, but we have to respect it in some way.
Пока мы не достигли этого. И сейчас эта проблема остается важнейшей. Более того, кое-кто вообще никаких уроков не извлек из этого. Вдруг государство, а теперь ядерное оружие уже доступно многим, и есть, и другие могут его производить, смогут производить в ближайшее, если не остановить этот процесс ядерного оружия. Вот. И возникает вопрос, значит, мы что, по кругу идем? Вот это и сейчас важнейший вопрос. Ведь в новых оборонных директивах, в своих оборонных оборонных документах страны записывают возможность, указывают на возможность применения ядерного оружия. Ну, подчеркивается, в исключительных случаях, когда есть угроза. А что такое исключительный случай?
And returning to Kremlin, there are, as always, many layers. Clearly, for Russian leaders, not only for Putin, for everybody, the expansion of NATO in the East was uninvited, unexpected, and absolutely, unhealthy process. Putin, I think, wrongly decided that Russia is capable now to take another stance.
The way in which we got into the mess in Ukraine, which is the most dramatic example of what's going on, is actually much more complicated than the accepted narrative. Actually, the initiator of change in the status quo was the West, not Putin. That the EU had negotiated an economic association agreement with Ukraine and with Yanukovych that basically was sliding Ukraine fast to the West, and that would, in time, even have likely brought Ukraine into NATO. Now, from Russian point of view, any Russian, across the whole spectrum, Ukraine in NATO was totally unacceptable. And if Russia were capable of preventing that, almost any Russian leader would have done so.
Russian activity in Ukraine, I also cannot accept that. But at the same time, I do understand that it was not done on the scale and without very thorough consideration of all the consequences.
Sauf que, toujours en parlant en 2016, il y a un élément nouveau qui s'ajoute à ça, qui est l'affaire de Syrie. Comme la position très en flèche des Occidentaux, notamment des États-Unis et de la France, qui consistait à demander que Assad parte, étant donné que cette politique a échoué, pour des tas de raisons, mais en tout cas elle a échoué. On en arrive à la situation, à l'heure où nous parlons, où le pays qui a quelques cartes en main pour tenter de trouver une solution en Syrie, c'est la Russie. La Russie avec les États-Unis, mais pas les États-Unis sans la Russie.
What about the option of controlling the airspace so that barrel bombs cannot be dropped?
All the options.
What do you think of that option, sir?
Right now, Senator, for us to control all of the airspace in Syria would require us to go to war against Syria and Russia. That's a pretty fundamental decision that certainly I'm not going to make.
How did the chemical weapons in Syria ever get removed? Only because of Lavrov's imagination and Russian cooperation. How about the deal to prevent Iran advancing its nuclear program? Again, Russia was the most important actor after the US in reaching that deal. So the idea that Russia is spoiling wherever and whenever it can is not right.
There are, interests that will prevent from becoming friends. Geopolitical realities that will prevent from becoming friends. But there are no reasons for not becoming partners, because there are lots of shared interests, mutual exposures to different challenges and threats that we're seeing around us.
Alors maintenant, est-ce que l'on pourrait rétablir des relations correctes avec la Russie? Je pense que oui.
If one's trying to build an international order, having the parties participating in making the rules as well as obeying the orders, makes sense. And Xi Jinping meet and talk about this. They essentially agree that the Americans say we are providing a rule-based international order, but from their perspective, frequently, it looks like we make the rules and they obey the order. As Russia is big and strong, at least in its domain, and as China is becoming bigger and stronger in its domain, the willingness to let you make the rules and me obey the orders becomes less and less. That's another place where we would have to adjust.
Il n'y a aucune prétention globale du côté de la Russie. Donc c'est compliqué comme situation. Je ne pense pas qu'il faille la dramatiser. Je pense qu'on peut trouver des solutions par rapport à ce problème qui est un problème géopolitique classique.
So I think what we want to look to with Putin and with Russia is to develop a business-like transactional relationship. We still have to do business with Russia, whether it's on issues of nuclear weapons, non-proliferation, Iran, the Middle East, the Arctic. And we shouldn't have any illusions about Russia, but the idea that isolating Russia and having a new Cold War is going to solve anything, no, that'd be a mistake.
Donc il me semble que l'OTAN serait très utile si on repensait l'accord entre OTAN et Russie. Donc il faudrait avoir le courage du point de vue occidental de dire On règle ensemble la question ukrainienne de façon correcte, neutralité ukrainienne. On règle ensemble la question syrienne, et on reconnaît que vous avez un rôle particulier à jouer. Après, on redéfinit les relations OTAN-Russie sur une base contemporaine. Ça veut dire que vous vous engagez à aucune action par rapport à des pays membres de l'OTAN, aucune provocation militaire à la marge, mais que nous développons des actions de coopération contre d'éventuelles menaces communes.
I do believe that Chancellor Merkel take the lead to deal with Russia, meanwhile. And indeed, she is a key player within the West. In the case of Ukraine, she asked Hollande, the French president, to join her. Talking to Putin, they went to Minsk, and now we do hope that Minsk II agreement will work.
Alors, je me demande si maintenant, étant donné que les Européens prennent conscience que le monde est quand même dangereux, que le monde, ce n'est pas simplement une sympathique communauté internationale. Donc, il me semble que des dirigeants américains devraient accepter aujourd'hui que les Européens fassent le pilier européen de l'Alliance. Il ne suffit pas de dire aux Européens « il faut monter à 2% du PIB pour vos dépenses de défense », ce que je comprends et ce que j'approuve, mais il faut accepter que les Européens s'organisent entre eux, même si c'est un petit peu plus compliqué après dans le fonctionnement de l'Alliance. Donc l'esprit de défense en Europe est lié à une plus grande responsabilité des Européens.
Germany, Poland and France have vowed to kick-start the so-called Weimar Triangle Group, first formed 25 years ago after the end of the Cold War. The respective foreign ministers see the group as helping with the many challenges facing today's Europe.
Germany has to play a key role, but our opinion was from the very beginning, not by itself alone. We have to do it together with France and Poland, you see. And this triangle, France, Germany, Poland, they have to play together a role of an engine, how to integrate Europe, how to shape the whole continent.
Steinmeier, Fabius and Sikorski plan to use their meeting in Weimar to elaborate new ideas for the future of Europe and for peace on our continent.
Most important today is to work for the intellectuals, the people of culture, and prevent from the creation of the perception of the enemy on both sides. I think change will happen. It's a matter of realism, and it can change very quickly.
Well, I think it's peace through strength. Strength and diplomacy go together. They're not alternative ways of going about something. They are interactive.
I mean, we would like to see a Russia which is integrated into Europe whole and free.
I know it sounds like ancient history to you, but I'm still alive and I'm able to tell you what I saw. 71 years, that program is continuing. This beautiful planet must continue. We cannot destroy them. We cannot commit that crime.
Как можно в этой ситуации заниматься всякими провокациями, подстрекательствами? Как задумывать какие-то и реализовывать планы, нанести урон партнеру или другому государству и получить самому какие-то выгоды? Это все, говорит, это можно только делать при отсутствии всякой морали.
War cannot be fought without cruelty. And all of them were part of that. I'm sure that, generals probably they write history and they write books, but soldiers do not. They pay with their lives for right or wrong decisions of the generals. Today, people that were soldiers at that time should be around 90. That's already too little, too few left.
Let me tell you an incident. that happened to me, and which I heard about quite a lot long after it happened. When I was Secretary of Treasury, one of my jobs was trying to develop and manage the economic relationship between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. And my opposite number was a crusty old communist named Patolachov. We got to know each other reasonably well. So he suggested after one of our sessions in Moscow that we go for the weekend in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. So to my surprise, he took a ride on my plane. We're riding there, and he says, "What would you like to see?" I said, "I'd like to see the same thing everybody else wants to see. I want to see the Hermitage, I want to see the Summer Palace." And he said, "No, first we go to the cemetery." So we'd go to this cemetery. It's a big piece of acreage, and there's a big platform that you walk out on, and you see before you rows and rows of mass graves, huge graves. So we go and we walk down the center aisle and lay a wreath at the end. And there's funereal music playing, and Patolachov is telling me about the Battle of Leningrad. Tears are streaming down his face. The interpreter that we'd had, I look around, she's totally broken down, weeping. And Patolachov is saying to me, every family in the Soviet Union was touched by Leningrad. And it was very moving and sad. So when we came back to the platform, I said to him, I have a sense of community with these people here because I also fought in World War II. I also had comrades shot down beside me. And furthermore, after all, these are the people who stopped Hitler. And I walked to the front of this platform and I got myself up in the best bearing I could as an old Marine and gave a long salute. And when I came back, Patolachov said, "Thank you, George, that shows respect."